Hello everybody, it's the Historical Gamer once again, and today we're going to be taking a first look at a new game that's coming to early access on August 21st. It is currently a preview build that's only available to YouTubers and streamers and the such, and as a result the game is still very much in a beta format, so the game is going to be evolving, changing, being refined, the AI is going to be improved and other things like that, and so just keep that in mind as we're going to take a first look at a preview of this game, Grand Tactician, The Civil War, 1861 to 1865, developed by Oliver Keppelmuller, same developer as behind the 7 Years' War, which is probably a slightly less well-known game, but is also available on Steam. Similar in concept to that, this is a game that has a lot, in my mind, it looks a lot like something like Ajod's Civil War II, but with a better user interface, while also having tactical battles in kind of a Total War sort of a vein. So it's a game where you can play the grand campaign of the American Civil War, being in charge of either the Confederacy or the Union, the entire war effort, as if you were the president and the sort of general-in-chief, while also allowing you to play tactical battles, more like something like Ultimate General Civil War or Scourge of War. So it kind of blends those two elements of the tactical gameplay with the strategic gameplay, something that not many games have tried to do recently. There were a few games in the early 90s that tried to do it. They didn't do a very good job, I don't think. Fort Sumter to Appomattox, the American Civil War, was a game that I played a little bit of that I think was similar, but it lacked the tactical battle aspect. So I'm really looking forward to this. I know a lot of you are. There's a lot of excitement around this game, and it also includes some great, beautiful menu screens that really seem to add a little bit of polish and storytelling to it by the folks over at Lionheart Filmworks. With that being said, today's video is going to be focusing on the campaign. What of it we can look at right now. Again, it is still in development. So the game does allow you to play historical battles as well. There are 10 historical battles that you can play through just the tactical battle. I'm going to do a separate video looking at the Battle of Antietam. I actually streamed that last night. So we'll look at that in another video. Probably multiple parts, but in today's video we're going to go ahead and jump right in and take a look at the campaign. Now the game immediately is coming with a Spring of 1861 and Spring of 1862 campaign. Spring is a little bit of a misnomer. I would have thought it would have been an April start, but it's actually a February start. Abraham Lincoln isn't even the president yet in the 1861 game. In 1862, obviously he is, and the 1862 campaign starts when the war is already underway. It starts in March of 1862, prior to the Peninsula campaign, really. But we're going to be taking a look at the Spring of 1861 campaign, so really the base start of the game. Now, obviously, in this campaign, you can play as either the Confederates or as the Union. In this video, we are going to be playing as the Union. When you pick a side, you are given up to 3 policy choices that you can select that influence that country along certain lines. So there's 10 different policies that you can choose from. So for the Union, for example, there's an Underground Railroad policy, which really allows you to decrease available slave labor. So the economy, which we'll talk a little bit about in a few minutes, is an integral part of this game, and the Confederate economy is completely dependent on slavery. And so the Underground Railroad policy by the Union helps to siphon that industrial aspect away from the Confederates as they lure slaves to freedom and away from the South as they assist them in escaping to gain their liberty. The Kansas as a free state policy allows Kansas to become anti-slavery, and so it increases Northern support in Kansas greatly if you follow this policy. There's also a policy called Go West. This policy encourages people's movement from the East Coast to the West Coast of the United States. Think through the Oregon Trail. Northern support in Arizona and New Mexico is increased significantly, so those are territories that are involved in the game. And the support for the Union is increased there. And also, large-scale recruitment is possible in California. You have the Southern support abolitionism, which makes the Union more more anti-slavery than it historically was earlier in the conflict, which will help, really keep abolitionists in the camp of the pro-war side, while it also will decrease Southern support in northern states substantially, so there's less sort of pro-Southern sympathies. There's an enforced neutrality, which cuts down on sort of filibustering expeditions to Latin America and other places that can hurt relations with European countries. There's a breadbasket element, which allows you to have American agriculture is stronger, which results in better relations with the Europeans. There is the industrialization perk, which obviously gives the Union a big buff in terms of industrial output in the economy. There's a security measures policy, which increases the amount of preparedness in the United States armories it won't help the Confederacy as much. So there's plans that are made to reduce the amount of weapons that the Confederates would get from arsenals as they start to take them. An alliance with the natives, which would allow you to have better relationships with the Native Americans against the Southern Rebellion. The policy will increase northern support in Indian Territory considerably, allowing recruitment in the form of Indian tribes living there. And then there is the Pacific Union Railroad, which will increase the likelihood, or I guess it basically assumes a more rapid building of the Transcontinental Railway, which allows you to have better trade with the Pacific and Western states, and it's already constructed at the start of the game. The Confederates, I'm not going to go quite through in as much detail, but they have similar policies, one of them being Old Dominion, which ensures that Virginia joins the Confederacy. It isn't necessarily a given depending on the policies you follow, and this is a policy that if you follow the Confederacy, Virginia will always join the Confederacy. Kansas can be promoted as a slave state. Slavery can be promoted to westward expansion, which will increase relationships with New Mexico and other western territories that can give you recruitment for new units. Apostles of Disunion basically means the Confederacy really dives into the pro-secessionist movement earlier, which is similar to, on the flip side, the abolitionist movement and the Union. The abolitionist movement makes Union states more anti-South, more pro-free slavery. The Apostles of Disunion does something similar for the Confederacy, where they're more pro-disunion and anti-Union. Filibustering is promoted by the Confederacy, which will increase trade and other things like that, increases Southern military experience as well. King Cotton, which is sort of an economic perk that will improve relations with Europe. There is Southern Industrialization, which assumes a more industrialized South. There is Arms Agents, which allows you to get better importing of weapons, as well as better Southern industry for production of weapons in the Confederacy. Native allies, obviously signing alliances and treaties with the Native American tribes in the West, specifically more around like Oklahoma and whatnot. The Confederacy historically did this. And then there's sort of an alternate transcontinental railroad. Instead of it going through the north, it goes through the south, like a Southern Pacific Railroad, which connects the Atlantic and Pacific coast, increasing trade with western states. The game will start with the Southern Pacific Railroad built and the Confederacy controlling parts of trade to the Pacific coast. So those are the different policies. You can go with the historic option, which in the case of the Union is Underground Railroad, Kansas is a free state and industrialization, and for the Confederates is Old Dominion, King Cotton, and Native allies. You can also choose to randomize it. I don't see an option to just let me manually... Oh. So there are options, I guess, to manually select. At least by the looks of it. It's not super clear. But in any event, you can either randomly have 3 chosen for you, or you can select 3 of your own, or it might be possible to dis-select some of these, and then manually select them. So I can do that, for example. So you can do either way, depending on how you want to play, and it'll obviously have a substantial impact on the game, but I've been talking for like 10 minutes, and we're not even in the game yet. So let's go ahead and jump in. You can see the starting military balance. Confederates have better morale than the Union. Neither side has any experience. The Union has 10,000 soldiers under arms, 40 ships in their side, and the Confederacy has not yet mobilized anything. So let's just go ahead and jump into the 1861 campaign. So one thing that this game has is this concept of chapters, which is something that you see as a result of the partnership with Lionhearted Filmworks. So you get these little reenactment bits, you get this voice acting where you get a little speech by Abraham Lincoln, and so the game is trying to tell a narrative around the Civil War and sort of the path to war, and at different points you get these different chapters of the conflict. It's almost a little bit Ken Burnsian in it. So you actually have it's like 5, might even be, I don't think it's 10 minutes, but it's a fairly long sort of documentary style piece where it's trying to tell you the road to war in this case, or at least in this case, the divide between the North and the South. and then you will eventually end up with one that talks about, now we're going to war and other things like that. So Chapter 1 is basically just a history of the United States and how the North and the South are divided, and what is the situation as of February of 1861 with the country on the verge of war, but not yet, flung into the precipice of war. It's pretty cool. Like, if you're really into Civil War history, and the gameplay, is obviously important for a lot of folks, but for some folks, it's really also a lot about the history. But I'm not going to go ahead and sit through this entire thing. We're just going to go ahead and jump forward. I just wanted to kind of show you guys that this thing exists, but we'll go ahead and jump forward. Okay, so we are now onto the main screen of the campaign. First things first, there's a field book that gives you a lot of information about the campaign UI, the 1861 start, the 62 start. The game will also develop a 63 and 64 start, so you can start basically at any point in the war except for once it's sort of already decided in 1865. I'm not going to click through all of these things, but it is useful in explaining the objectives of the war and whatnot. I will say the main objective for the war is to break the other side's morale. So that's the key. It's not about taking this city or that. Taking cities obviously influences enemy morale. Killing enemy soldiers influences enemy morale. But at the end of the day, it's all about breaking the morale of the other side. If the Union morale breaks, then they'll demand a peace. If the Confederate morale breaks, then obviously they'll give up the struggle. You also get these little newspapers that pop up periodically throughout the game that tell you kind of what's going on right now. So right now, it's February 23rd of 1861. You've got a little write-up that says, America divided. President Buchanan is unable to solve the crisis. He's still a president. Lincoln has not yet been sworn in. Jefferson Davis has been tabbed to lead the Confederacy. Texas has voted 3-1 to secede, despite Sam Houston's best efforts. Sam Houston, the hero of the war between Texas and Mexico, was actually opposed to secession, and turned a lot of people against him. But this is basically giving you key news from the front lines as the war is occurring, and the game is telling you that you should really review this information review this information closely, because it does have relevance to the game and may give you hints about how the war is going, what public opinion is feeling, and the general sentiment of your country, which is important because, as I said, the goal of this game is to break the enemy's morale and not have your own morale broken. The national morale is determined by an average of the morale of all of the states on your side. So if the game gives an example of if you have a regiment from Illinois that fights a battle and gets completely wiped out or loses heavy casualties, the national morale or public opinion or war support in Illinois is going to drop. That is going to have an effect on the entire national morale because now the average of Illinois' morale has dropped. If that happens enough on the Union side, it can lead to potentially demanding a peace. Now, this is the main campaign screen. It's got a cool sort of map, vibe look to it, a little bit of like an old-timey map. You can zoom in or out with the use of your mouse wheel. As you zoom in, you do get a little bit more granular information. So you can see here, obviously, these are kind of swamp, wetland type deals. You can see roadways, major roadways that troops might march across. You can potentially even see like railways here. That'll show you where the railways are, which are all important to how the game plays out, how troops move across the map, and whatnot. If you continue zooming in, you will actually get sort of, I don't know if it's 3D, but it's close. It's probably 3D. Map layout of the countryside of the entire country. So as you zoom in even further, you'll get detail about cities, you'll get detail about bridges, you'll get details about, industrial facilities or factories or other things like that. So you can see here there's Fredericksburg is apparently currently in the Union. Well, actually, yeah, because Virginia hasn't seceded yet. As we move forward here, you'll see that there's a port in Alexandria, Virginia. There's a port in Washington, D.C. You can see out toward Winchester, there is a manufacturing center. And all of these different pieces of information. These items can be destroyed by raiders. They can be captured by armies as they move around. And you can scroll around the map and see, what the country looks like. It's almost like a Google Maps sort of zoom in, zoom out, and I think it's kind of cool. You also see the different units that are already in position at the moment. So again, it's February of 61. Virginia has not yet seceded. Oh, and the game is in real time, by the way, as well. So it's continuing to go on as I talk. But you can see here another newspaper pops up. It's now February 24th. We're on to the second day of the game. Jefferson Davis has been inaugurated. He's been becoming president for 6 years, which is relevant, obviously. The Confederates have begun seizing U.S. property and are mobilizing state militias. So the Confederate State Army is being formed. All of these things are telling you what's going on. So it also gives you some pressure to act in certain ways. But before we take a look at the other screens on here, one thing that is also worth mentioning is on these screens you can see where your forces are. Currently, the Union doesn't have a standing army that's in the field, but it does have several different garrisons located all throughout the United States and through the Confederate States as well. So you can see here there's a Fortress Monroe garrison. You can click on that unit and you get some information about that unit over here on the left side. So the Fortress Monroe garrison consists of 249 men. One of them is disabled. There are 17 artillery pieces. The morale is eager. They have 100% supplies. The ammunition is currently looks like it's in good shape. The provisions are at least over half strength, and the forage is also very strong, all represented by these icons on the screen. You can also see that they're awaiting orders. Their readiness is excellent. Their intelligence is very good. The condition is good, and the training level of the soldiers there is good. They're all regular Army soldiers, right? You can see the same information about Fort Morgan on the other side of, is that the James River? Where just by Norfolk. So information there. There's fewer troops there at Fort Morgan, only 74 men, 1 disabled, 5 guns, but you can see that information. As you use the mouse wheel to zoom out, you can see there's additional forts. There's one at Moorhead on the Outer Banks of North Carolina. There's a fort to the south of Wilmington at Fort Coswell in North Carolina, North Carolina. In South Carolina, there is Fort Sumter, obviously, the sort of historical fort here. And then you can see there's other forts that are occupied by Confederate forces as they are becoming mobilized here. So if we zoom in here, we can see there's a garrison at Fort Sumter, and we can see here that Major Robert Anderson, the historical commander of that garrison, is located here. He has 88 men under his command. 0 men are disabled. He has 6 active artillery pieces. He's awaiting orders with excellent readiness, poor intelligence, good conditioning, and very good morale. Also, you can see his ammunition stockpiles as well. We can dig a little bit more into this later, but that's what you can see here. Additionally, you can see there's Confederate units here as well. So there's Confederate troops at Fort Moultrie and Fort Johnson on either end of the entrance to Charleston Harbor. And there's also a squadron of Confederate warships, although only just one ship. I'm assuming it's not a very large ship, located at the Confederacy Harbor in Charleston. If we zoom back out here, we can see the Confederate states that have already seceded have red outlines around them, while the Union states have blue, and the border states are somewhat gray. It's hard to tell, but these guys are still considered Union, even though we're pretty sure that Virginia, North Carolina, Tennessee will all join the Confederacy. They're not dark blue yet, so they are Union, but they're not maybe super enthusiastic. We can also see there's additional forts here at Mobile Bay. Confederate garrisons have taken Fort Morgan, Fort Gaines. We can see Fort Massachusetts down here. All have Confederate garrisons, but there's another Union unit over here at Fort Pickens in Pensacola. So just some of the different locations. There's also Union forts all up and down the East Coast, as well throughout, the Potomac area near D.C., up near Philadelphia, up near New York, and you can see the entire map here. So that's the situation right now on the strategic map. Not much else to talk about there, so let's talk about some of the other items on this map. First off, on the right side of the map, you can see here are the campaign units. So these are all the different military units, and you can scroll through them. It's kind of like a little Total War thing where you can scroll through all your different armies. Right now, everybody's in forts, and they're all garrisons. So none of these units can move, to my knowledge. I don't see any option to give them orders, even. It seems like, at least at this stage of the war, these garrisons are all static. We can also click on this anchor icon to pull up the fleets, and you can see we have a home squadron here just off the coast of New York. And that home squadron consists of 11 ships with 119 guns. They can stay at sea for up to 60 days. It's commanded by Commodore Garrett Pendergrast, and it has 119 guns. We can scroll through the individual ships down here. Each one of these can be sunk. In my live stream first look yesterday, I got the whole fleet destroyed trying to sail into Charleston Harbor to save Fort Sumter. Not a good idea, but you can see here there's 11 warships here. All of them are in relatively good shape, and they are all sitting off the coast of New York. There are other ships as well, so there are additional vessels that we could give orders to. So if I hit the Manage Fleet option here, there's also a bunch of ships in harbor. Now, you can see the readiness of all the ships at sea is 100%. The ships in harbor are not all ready for sea. So you can see there's a 74-ship ship of the line, the USS Vermont, the USS New Orleans, the USS Alabama, a bunch of 74-gun ship of the lines, which could be good, potentially, bombardment craft. Although a sail of the line, I don't think they have screws at all. So they're probably not as useful. They're all, readiness is only around 25%. The old Ironsides, again, just a sail frigate, so not as good here, but has 50 guns and is at 100%. You can see its speed is 12 knots. You can see its building cost. You can see its size, its movement. It's a sailing ship, so all of the ships in the home squadron, well, maybe not all of them, but some of them, there are sailings, ships, sloops of war. They have a lot fewer guns, though, in all of those cases. So I'm out sail in steam for a lot of these guys. So a lot of these ships, historically, they had fewer guns, but they had, like, better guns. They had, like swivel mount, like 100-pounder type deals. You can also apparently upgrade your ships. I'm not sure what to, but apparently you can. So that's worth mentioning. You can upgrade things like artillery as well. You also have different information about the commanding officers, and this is true of every unit that you select. So, like, for example, Commodore Garrett Penderhurst, commander of the home squadron, you can see here his fame is very low, 1 star. It's insignificant. His initiative is cautious. His leadership is 2 stars, which means he's liked. His administration is 2 stars, which means he's mediocre. And his cunning is 1, which means is predictable. One thing that's cool is with all this, anytime you hover over the screen, you do get a tooltip that pops up that gives you a little bit of information about what you're looking at, although it's not always, I wish it came up a little bit quicker. You can also see his rank over here is actually commander, not commodore. I was wrong. And he is a volunteer, so I guess he doesn't have any military experience. He volunteered for duty and was appointed or elected to command while lacking a formal military education. That feels wrong for a commander of a fleet at this time. You can also replace him, by the way. Okay, so Davis is calling for militia, 12-month contracts, provisional armies formed, states forming new regiments, and a call to arms. The Confederacy passes the Militia Act number 1. We'll get to that in a moment, guys. So anyway, this is the information you can see about the commander. You can choose to replace him. Doesn't look like I have any commanders I can replace him with at this time. You also get a history of the commander as well. Let's take a look actually at the armies to give a history of the commanders there, give a little bit more meaning. So if we go here and I click on armies, so we clicked on fleets as the pull-up from down here. If we go ahead and click on armies here, you can get information about the troops that are currently in service. Apparently not. Let's do this instead. Military is up here, so you've got a tooltips, or you've got buttons along the top. You can select here strategy, military, finances, politics, production, and goods and trade. When you click on military, it brings up the same fleet army officers screen that we just had up. So that's something that you can scroll through and look at. So if we go to officers, for example, we can see right now the General-in-Chief is a Major General Winfield Scott. You've got information about him. His fame is legendary. He's passive. Leadership styles backwards. We can click on him and we can get information about him. So we can see that he's a Major General over here on the left side. I don't know if there's a tooltip for that. It's his rank. You can see he's a veteran of the Mexican-American War, which means that he saw combat before the Civil War. It means he knows what to expect when the shells start barking. His fame, you can see it says fame here. Everyone knows his name and his deeds, so he's obviously very famous, one of the most famous American military members of all time. And then he's also apparently a volunteer as well. He was volunteered for duty, I guess. Anyway, you can see the breakout of his stuff down here. You can see his history. He fought in the Mexican-American War. He's promoted to captain in 1808, promoted to lieutenant colonel in 1812, colonel in 1813, brigadier general in 1814, and major general in 1841. So you've got all that information about that commander on this screen. And then you've got a bunch of other officers here. William Tecumseh Sherman, Irvin McDowell, Don Carlos Buell. So, a bunch of the historical officers. You've got men who are lieutenants. You've got men who are captains. You've got men who are majors. So you can see all of that information down here. Ulysses S. Grant, was that him? I think I saw him. Here he is, Ulysses S. Grant. Fame is 3. Apparently he is famous or is known as a rising star. His initiative is obviously aggressive. Leadership style is distinguished. I wonder if these traits change at all. His administration is good, and his cunning is foreseeable, which I don't think that is an accurate description of Grant at all. Maybe at this point in his career, I hope that's able to be changed. His Vicksburg campaign would certainly speak to that not being the case. Anyway, back to the armies here. So you can click on an army. You can see an individual commander's information by going to the commander tab. You can see all that same information. You can see the commander's history, and you can see the unit history here as well. Fort Monroe Garrison, not a good example of a unit history, but in any event. Also, if you do want to disband a unit, you can select a unit here. So this is sort of an order of battle. We'll build a new army just so we can kind of display how this all looks in a little bit, because this is not the single unit armies. You don't really see this very well. But if you do click on a unit, you can see here the Fort Monroe. So there's the Fort Monroe Garrison, which is 246 men, 7 disabled, 5 guns. And then there is a sub-unit of that, the Fort Monroe Batteries, which include another 17 guns, 7 disabled, and 246 men. And if I wanted to delete them, I could go over here and click delete, and it would disband them. Not going to do that. Wouldn't be very wise right now. Okay. Why won't you let me cancel? Some of these things are a little bit like there's a fair bit of lag right now in the game, and again, it is in a beta state, so just keep that in mind. I wonder if that's a bug where it requires me to. I don't know. I guess I'll delete it just to get rid of that screen. Also, you can see the different units on the screen here. Obviously, we see the garrisons and whatnot that I can't do a lot with, but the home fleet is a unit I can issue orders to. So you can see here these 11 ships. Currently, the home squadron is at sea. I can order them to move, so I can either order them to stop or return to port. I can do the manage fleet screen, which pulls up the screen we saw before. I can give the fleet orders to blockade or patrol a given spot, and I can give them a defensive or offensive stance. In addition to that, and this is true for land units as well, I can just tell them right-click, go down here, and I want you to move by sea down to Charleston. So they'll do that, I think. Yep. So I went down here. One thing about issuing orders, though, is when you right-click on an order, you have to go ahead and hit this Issue Orders button to make them take the orders. Also, if you issue multiple sets of orders, it will for at least land units, it kind of links the orders into multiple phases. So just keep that in mind. The Issue Orders things is kind of hidden. It's not super obvious when you click on that. So anyway, this squadron is heading south toward Fort Sumter. So let's take a look at some of the other basic information as well. We can go ahead and restart, I think. So if we go ahead up and look up here, the date on the top left is presented to you here. It's February 25th of 1861. The 3.7 thousand is actually the amount of money here. So this little icon here represents how much money we currently have. The 36,495 represents how much money will come into our coffers. I'm not sure if it's every day or every month, but that's our income right now. The 2,469 men is the number of men currently under arms in our forces. We have a sea transport capacity, so if we're moving ships by sea, we use this up. But this is the total transport capacity based off of all conditions, seaports, transportation, subsidies, other things like that. We have a total riverine transport capacity as well, which is the amount of men we can move on rivers, also determined by ports and transport subsidies. And then we have a railroad capacity as well, which is how many troops and things like that we can move over railroad cars also. You get an envelope up here with pop-ups as events occur. So if we click here, we'll see that there's someone is low on supply. So we get a telegraph into the Army War Office that is telling us, and I can't even read this cursive very well, the Fort Monroe Garrison is low on supply, apparently. That's a problem. We don't want to lose the Fort Monroe Garrison. Oh, shit. That's because So I basically wrecked the Fort Monroe Garrison because I disbanded one of their subunits, didn't I? So there's essentially just like a headquarters force here currently with the Fortress Monroe Garrison. So I guess what we'll do here is we'll add a new unit. And you can see here if you want to build units or add new units, when you click on that add new unit, you get a pop-up. You have to select what state you want the unit to come from. There is a certain amount of support available from each state. Now, states that are seceded but are not yet at war with us obviously have lower amounts of support for the Union. Unionist states like Connecticut and Delaware obviously have higher amounts of support, and sort of border states are kind of in the middle, like Kentucky and Maryland. What's Virginia at? Virginia's at 30, so they're not really very pro-us, but they're not the lowest. So, for example, we can go ahead and have District of Columbia here. There's 121 volunteers in that unit. There's 4,182 volunteers. So, essentially, the support level indicates how much support is from that state. The men fielded indicates how many men are currently under arms from that state. Casualties is total casualties sustained by that state since the war started. Deserters is the same. Volunteers is the current number of soldiers that are volunteering for service in that state, and drafts are the number of draftees available from that state. We haven't passed the draft yet, so there's obviously no one there. So I'm going to go ahead and recruit a Massachusetts force, and I'm going to go ahead and recruit a Massachusetts artillery battalion. Only 87 men, only 750 men in an infantry battalion, only 625 men in a infantry brigade, cavalry brigade, artillery battalion, and horse artillery battalion. But we're only 87 men currently. Part of that's because these are 1 month volunteers, so these guys only last a month, which means they're not going to be around for very long. But we haven't passed the required policies to have longer-term troops. Also, as I recruit these guys, you can see they're Massachusetts State Militia. It's going to take 13 days until they arrive at Fort Monroe, so we've called these troops up as part of the Massachusetts State Militia, and they will be arriving there before too long. You can see this unit is going to be consisting of 12-pound Napoleons. I can actually change the weapon here. So if I want, I can spend a little bit more money to get like 12-pound Iron Napoleons. I can get 10-pound Parrott rifles. I can scroll down here and see if there's other units like 24-pound howitzers, 12-pound howitzers, 30-pound Parrott rifles. But these are grayed out, so I can't actually get any of those other units. The only other weapon currently available to me is 6-pound field guns. And some of these haven't been researched. Sometimes it's because you can't import the weapons from another country yet. We'll just leave that as is for now. So let's go ahead and close out of this screen. Let's take a look at some of the other screens here. So the strategy screen is going to give us basic information about the war. Break Confederate morale. The objective is to break the Confederacy's morale. That's how you win. Means the national morale has to drop below 25. It'll force them to sue for peace, and you win the campaign. That's the only objective for the North. I don't know what the South's morale objectives are, but for the North, you have to break the Confederates' morale. By the way, apparently on February 23rd, New Mexico Territory joined the Confederacy. So you can see right now the Union morale is 85, the Confederacy is 100. The national support, support within the states is 98 to 75. I think that's what national support is. Morale of the armies is 97 to 100. Loyal states is 29 to the Union, 12 to the Confederacy. 2,476 men fielded for the Union, 1,373 in all the forts for the Confederacy. Naval tonnage is 11,720 to 0. Military experience, battles won, casualties, all 0. European relations, currently 44 for the Confederates, 12 for the Union. If this European relation gets high enough for the Confederacy, the Union, the British or the French or whoever can actually end up joining the Confederacy. And I don't believe the war just auto-ends at that point. I think you actually fight. The military screen here is where you build your armies. I'm going to take a closer look at that in a moment. I don't want to make this too long of a video, but I will dive into that before the video wraps up. Finances here are what you would think. They're the finances of your country. So you can see here the blue line represents the Union, the red line represents the Confederacy. The economy is obviously very important. Income is very important to funding the war. Currently, we are generating $80 million by sales tax. We are generating $414,000 by tariffs. We have no income tax, no corporate tax, and we are generating $100,000 by land sales taxes. That gives us revenues of $79,991,000. Our expenses, the administration's expenses, the government costs are $40,345. The subsidies that the administration is giving, and it gives you a little summary here. Costs are for governing the country will be higher with more sources of revenue, and subsidies are used. The lower the state support, and the more expensive the implementation of policies will be per year. Subsidies here involve things that, like, you can pay subsidies to agriculture, which will improve the amount of agricultural output, which can have an influence on the European countries' support for you. You can give subsidies to the industry to allow private industry to grow more rapidly, or other things like that. Interest costs on our debt per year. So obviously, as we spend more and accumulate more debt, take more bonds, interest costs go up. You've got Army upkeep, Navy upkeep, and recruitment. Those are all pretty straightforward. I wonder does recruitment costs also include replacement loss units? These costs arise when new units are raised and existing units are refitted. The costs depend on the price of weapons, uniforms, and national bounties. Okay. And then there's the total expense. So between the $78,000 and the $52,000, we have a surplus of $25,000. That might be monthly. Or no, that's per year. Revenues less expenses are permanently added to your treasury balance. So I guess that is per year. Okay, so you can see the information treasury balance of the Union. The economy is currently seeing an expansion cycle, which means the economy is growing, and private income and interest rates are expanding. Wealth, we have high incomes. That means people are generally wealthy and generally happy. There are low levels of unemployment, high levels of consumer goods support as high. Personal incomes are high. Therefore, high income tax revenues will be generated. Unemployment levels are 8.4%. National debt is $55 million. Interest rates are 8.3%, which can change. Credit rating is AAA. Money currently on hand is the $4,046,000. You can see the two should more or less match up. You also can see tariff percentage taxes, sales taxes, income taxes, corporate taxes. I don't think I can influence income taxes yet because I haven't passed income taxes. Same for corporate taxes. And then you've got subsidies over here. So political subsidies are going to give you more policies, I suppose, that you can use in the policies window, which we'll look at in a second. The diplomacy section here is something where you can have better foreign relations or cheaper prices of weapons or availability of weapons that you might import from overseas. You can import things like Enfield rifles, Lorenz rifles, things like that. Industry benefits heavy industry, boosting productivity and profitability for industries, so you can subsidize the Industrial Revolution to give your economy a boost. Agriculture does the same thing for farming. Transportation might increase your transportation capacity up here. Trade wars is, I'm not sure what that one is about. That's more, I guess, the efficiency of the blockade, so funding like the Navy and things like that. Recruitment obviously influences how many soldiers are willing to sign up for your service. That could be things like, or specifically in this case, it's about volunteers. And then civil order, which I assume is like policing and like keeping draft riots and other things like that under wraps. Okay, so we'll take a look at the politics window here. This is an important window in terms of how the game plays. Actually, before we go over this, let's go ahead and take a look at production. So there's two windows I'm going to show you here that are really kind of irrelevant to anything you have to manage on a day-to-day basis, but they are important. And they're almost Victoria-like in terms of the amount of detail that they share. This is the production screen. So this shows all of the industrial production that is occurring, in our case, in the entire Union. We have the Confederacy turned off. You can turn it on if you want, and you can see the production occurring also in the Confederacy. But in this case, we'll turn it off, and we'll just look at the production occurring in the states of the Union. Some of these states haven't left the Union yet. You can see Little Rock, Arkansas is on here. This basically represents industrial facilities. It doesn't necessarily represent an individual logging mill or an individual manufacturing mill, or, the Chicago Iron Works isn't necessarily one ironworks. It could be a whole group of ironworks in the city of Chicago, or the foundries could be a whole group of foundries in the city, or in that city. This is important to understanding how the economy is functioning, but you don't actually have to do anything here. So it shows you the workforce, so the number of people that are working there. It shows you the slave ratio, so the ratio of individuals who are working there that are slaves. Certain industries can have higher percentages of slaves than others because they're more manual labor, they're more, whatever, like cotton picking is obviously going to have a higher slave percentage than something occurring in the North. Northern states obviously have no slave percentage. So this is something that allows Confederate states to have, or border states with slaves, the ability to have potentially outsized production at lower costs because you don't have to pay your slaves, obviously. This shows you what is being produced at that individual location per year. This shows you the total value of those goods, and this shows you, the value of those goods right now. So that takes the production times the price of that item and gives you the value. And then this shows the corporate tax amount. So what the tax rate is, or what the tax revenue is you can generate off of that item. And then you get an efficiency meter over here. The production is probably a lot more important for the Confederacy than it is for the Union, because as you blockade and strangle the Confederacy, there's going to be a shortage of items, which then means that the items that there's a shortage of are going to have their prices go up, which is then going to cause unhappiness. It's going to hurt the economy. The economy might shrink or other things like that. Confederate raids could also destroy some of these items in the North as well, so you could have an impact there. But basically, this represents the fact that the Civil War had a very large economic impact to it. Left side here, the amount of building, the building level, I'm not sure what that means. Doesn't really tell me, just says I. The condition of your facility is 100%, so no damage, everything's fine. Corporate tax, profits, workforce percentage, I guess available workforce percentage. As you as your population grows, you'll achieve higher levels of workforce, while the founding of new companies were lowering it. So the economy all kind of operates on its own, but this is giving you a window into how the economy is doing. And then you also have goods and trade, which kind of gets into the supply-demand side of things. So this is where you can see the average price of artillery, ammunition, bricks, bronze, clothing. The Civil War was an economic war, and so you can see a lot of that is all represented in all these finished goods, what the price of those are, what the value of those are. The ability to import and export these goods is critical. Again, I think this is going to be much more important for the Confederacy than it is going to be for the Union. The Union is probably largely okay, but this is all really awesome to see. So I've been talking for over a half an hour now. We haven't really played the game yet, but I've just been giving you sort of an overview of the campaign screens. One last thing that I will talk about here is the policies. So these are different decisions that you can make. So we can have up to 8 policies that are running simultaneously. For example, I can go with government funding level 1. This is policies just sort of abstracted out that the government will follow certain economic policies that allow the credit rating to improve. It allows for new funding to be generated for the war, and it allows for improved credit rating, allowing lower interest rates and new loans. So if I click on this, that policy will begin to be implemented. This puts us on a train down this section here on the left, where the blue icons represent the sort of Union follow-ups. So Government Funding 1 will open up the Tariff Act, which can generate tariff revenue. It will open up print notes. It'll open up print notes 2. It'll also move down to the Confiscation Act, where we might be taking things from the South in rebellion, like cotton, taking it from them. And it also goes down, I believe, to Government Funding 2, which is, again, a further transition of this. Now, currently only one policy is selected because I've only selected Government Funding 1. If I go down the chain here, I believe it'll unselect, and I can replace this selection with one of these down the chain. So real quick here, Industrialization Policy 1 is selected. That's by the Confederacy, by the looks of it. More support for Confederate factories. Iron casemates are being built for Confederate ships. Mass production of new types of weapons. Arming of civilian ships is made possible. So again, the newspaper is giving me information. We're now to March 1st in the game, and the newspaper is giving me more information about what's occurring. Another thing we can do is we can choose a policy for breadbasket. This strengthens our agriculture, which also leads to better relationships with Europe. One of the things that a lot of people don't know about the Civil War is that the American Civil War, while the Confederacy was trying to lure the British and European countries into their side by withholding cotton from them as sort of a weapon to say, like, hey, your economies are completely dependent on cotton, you need us, come help us. One of the things that was also working against the Confederacy is that I believe Great Britain had a famine during the American Civil War, and American grain was instrumental in keeping the British population fed, and so that helped keep unrest in Britain under control. And so if the British went to war with the supplier of their food, great, we have cotton, but you can't eat cotton. And so that was an important aspect to the diplomatic efforts here. And so we're going to go ahead and we're going to implement breadbasket number 1. We're also going to implement industrialization level 1. That'll just basically help the industry, the economy, and whatnot grow and become larger and more effective and all of those things. And then we're also going to go ahead and we're going to go with diplomacy 1. Again, you'll get a pop-up here if I just kind of wait over this. But this policy allows us to import Enfield and Lorenz rifles from overseas and begins us, trying to build better relations with Europe. So at this point, we've selected 4. We can have up to 8 policy used at any one time. We're going to go ahead and select military policy number 1. This will allow more subsidies to boost recruitment, security, trade war effort. They also reorganization of the nation's military, increasing military capabilities. Military number 2 is what you need, I believe, to build cores, at least in theory. And then there's other policies down here. So, for example, if you go further down, you can start raising African-American troops. You can start having 24, 36-month enlistments. You can start the Enrollment Act, which I don't know if that is what starts the draft or whatnot, but there's other things. This is basically a technology tree that all of these different items start to become unlocked in different chapters of the game. So as you progress from a house divided into the second chapter when the war actually starts. I can start the war right now if I want to, by the way, by choosing Militia Act number 1. What Militia Act number 1 will do is basically President Lincoln's 75,000 call for volunteers. It's not actually 75,000, but it's the historical equivalent. But the Confederacy will consider that an act of war and will begin to secede against the North. You can also have the AI auto-manage this section for you, so that's another option. So this has been a little bit of a long video. The intent is to provide an overview of playing the game, but we obviously we haven't played the actual game yet. I've just been giving you an overview. This has almost been acting like a tutorial of some of the different things to be mindful of. You can see here, I thought I saw another state go red, but maybe I'm wrong. We're to March 1st. By the way, our squadron of warships is heading south toward Charleston. So we've been making steady progress there, and the game has paused since that last newspaper article occurred. I haven't really started raising any troops or anything like that. I probably should. It keeps telling me the Confederacy's raising troops, but I don't know if that's true or not. It looks like the Confederacy have raised like another 100 men, so maybe they got another fortress garrison or artillery something. But I don't know. I haven't really seen any indication of that. We could just start the war right now on March 1st if we wanted to sort of preempt Fort Sumter. Now, this game is real-time, as you can see here, so the time is moving down here in the lower right. It's 5 o'clock in the morning on March 1st. There's a time compression option, so I can move it up to times 10, which obviously will move time much more close or more quickly. Obviously, as the war progresses and you have many armies in movement and other things like that, this may become a little bit hard to manage at times. I do kind of wonder if weekly turns might not have been a little bit more interesting, but real-time, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. We can see our squadron of warships is moving toward Charleston. I don't even know if the Confederates will fire on us yet because we haven't issued the Militia Act yet, which will begin the war. I think also if I don't do anything by April, they'll probably fire on Sumter anyway, per the history, but I'm not 100% sure on that either. One other thing here, you can see it looks like currently the balance is in favor of the Union. I think that's what this arrow represents here, so something to kind of keep in mind. So we're to March 3rd. We're moving our fleet toward Charleston. If I can get the Confederates to fire on me, that would be preferable. I also don't know exactly what these numbers represent by cities, but I believe they have something to do with like the national morale impact that losing that location will have on you. Okay, so Buchanan is no longer president. Lincoln has been inaugurated. He's the 16th president of the United States, developing a new cabinet to handle the crisis. Buchanan is leaving the office. Fort Sumter is holding out. And there's pictures of Lincoln's inauguration. So March 4th, 1861, we can see here Abraham Lincoln is now the president, the commander-in-chief of the Union armies. So the squadron is... I want to see if I can send it into port. They're currently set to a defensive stance. So the Confederacy's not shooting at me yet. They would be shooting because I've seen my fleet get destroyed. Meanwhile, Anderson apparently has 100% supplies. I think these guys are anchored now. So our home squadron is at Fort Sumter, and it is March 5th, and we have not yet seen the war break out. So the fleet is at its destination. It's a little bit hard to read those notes. Oh, if I just hover over, it gives me, my fleet has reached the given destination with 0 men and 0 guns. Morale of the men is eager. Well, you have more than 0 men and 0 guns. You have 11 ships and 119 guns. That's weird. In any event, that's the situation right now for the fleet. You can see it's off the coast of Charleston, so I don't know if that changes the equation currently. But the Confederacy's yet to declare war. So we could just fast forward things and move closer to war. You can see here, funding 1 policy selected. The Union credit rating improves. Print money notes made possible. Tariffs on imports to increase. ? Economy preparing for war. So we can see here it takes a little bit of time for those policies to go into place. But once you do select a policy and it does go into place, then other items open up down the line. So you can see this policy is now checkmarked, which means it's in place. These other items, breadbasket, industrialization, military 1, diplomacy 1, are all currently being worked on but are not yet in effect. I've used 5 policies. I can go ahead and print notes, which will generate more money, and also follow the Tariff Act. And that will, allow me to move with 2 more policies, but will also increase the number of used policies for us as well. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It should say 6. I don't know if that's a bug or not. So March 5th, we're trying to get our situation, I guess by doing these different things, what I'm really trying to do is to get our country in slightly better shape for the war financially so that we're able to, just jump right in and start building large amounts of troops. We're obviously not going to fight any battles in today's video. Again, we're closing in on an hour, but I am going to start building some troops in a few moments. You know what? Screw it. Let's just build some troops. Union printing new notes. New greenbacks flood the market. Inflation is expected to soar. Public wealth plummeting. Oh, shit. Maybe those were bad policy choices. If we look at finances here, you can see wealth is still prospering and the economy is expanding. National debt hasn't changed. Interest rates may have changed slightly. Let's go back to policies here. So you can see the print notes is done. Does it tell me how long it's going to take for the Tariff Act to be implemented? It doesn't. Weird. That would be nice for it to tell me. Screw it. Let's just go with Military Act 1. That's gonna set off the war. But we'll do it. Then I can show you how things work as you move between chapters. So go ahead and fast forward here. Union passes the Tariff Act. Tariff rates are rising. European traders are shocked. So obviously that might influence our relationship with European nations. So if we go back to policies here, now you can see that the Tariff Act has been passed, which is over here. Not sure why these policies occur more quickly. I'm not going to print more notes. There's no reason to do that again. I guess you might need to do it early on if you're really trying to raise a military fast. Naval bombardments. Oh, shit! Oh, shit! The Confederacy's firing on us. We've already lost one ship. Get out of there, boys. The war has begun. Get out. So they're not bombarding Fort Sumter, but they are shooting at our home squadron. Now, this is not what the tactical battles look like, just to keep in mind. I think the naval stuff is a little bit more abstracted, almost like EU. But the tactical battles do occur on a tactical battle map. So let's try and get these guys out of there. They're trying to get away. You can see Fort Moultrie is on fire, so we might have damaged it a little bit. But our naval squadron here, they're trying to get out. You'd think they'd be able to pull out of combat sooner, but you can see they've cleared it. So military policy 1 is selected. The Union strengthens its military, preparing for a blockade. Naval proposes arming civilian ships. Privateering proposed. That's not the militia policy yet, though. Still, the fact that they shot at me kind of tells me that I think the war has begun. Let's zoom out here. So North Carolina and Virginia are red now, so those are Confederate. The policies section is still working on Militia Act number 1. We also have an option to arm civilian ships. This has got to be a bug, why it's not increasing the used policies. We can also go with Diplomacy Level 2, which does what? Diplomacy focuses in policymaking with boosting relations with European superpowers. Further subsidies are made possible. The policy also allows import of Enfield musketoons. Okay. Oh, well, it just updated there as I purchased that policy. All right, we're going to pull the home fleet back. We did lose one ship sunk by the looks of it. So that's not great. I wonder why the newspaper didn't recognize the fact that they declared war or started shooting at us in any event. You can also see that Fort Moorhead over here on the Outer Banks now has a Confederate flag on it. We still have a garrison at Wilmington, though, by the looks. Nope, actually we don't.
This step
Okay, so we are moving. So we invested in the militia policy, or the fact that they started shooting at us. Whatever. This is a new chapter. So this whole first bit that I was kind of rushing through is sort of the preamble to the war. It's you getting the Union ready in different senses for the war. You can wait, I think, till April to prevent the war or to do other things, and potentially, I don't know how you would do it, but you might be able to influence which states come to war against you or join the war on which side. But obviously you can see here, we saw the first chapter. We're moving into the second chapter. It's giving the story of Lincoln, the story of secession in the Confederacy. And so we'll go ahead and fast forward here. You can see Lincoln vows to quell the rebellion. Volunteers are flooding city halls. And Europe is reluctant to take sides. So the war is underway. You can see up here the British intervention percentage is at 31. So if that gets high enough, the British will intervene or might intervene. Meanwhile, our artillery and other units like that are still here. I'm going to do one last thing before this episode ends, because we've been going for almost an hour. I'm going to go ahead, and you can see Navy is arming civilian ships, ready to convert civilian ships to make our fleet bigger so we can blockade the Confederacy. And now I can do 3-month volunteers. So I'd rather do 12-month volunteers, so I'm actually going to go ahead and select that. I don't really want to raise 3-month troops because they seem kind of worthless. So we'll do that. I don't want to really issue letters of marque. That feels like it would anger the British. But I will go with breadbasket level 2, which again should help improve relations with European powers and the British. And then I think we'll go with military number 2, which is down here under this chapter 2, Demons of War. So I think when you cross from chapter 1 to 2, that's what triggers it. So I'm not sure why Militia Act 1 would have triggered it, maybe just because they start shooting at you. In any event, I want to try and get this Militia Act number 2 done before I start raising troops. You can see the Confederates really haven't started raising a lot more in the way of troops yet. We've got 2,600. They've got 1,593. Looked like it might have gone up slightly today, so they might be raising a small number of garrison troops. You can see the number is changing a little bit. We still have our troops at Fort Sumter. They haven't actually bombarded the fort yet. All they did was drive off our warships with naval gunfire. But, yep, they are slowly expanding their forces. They're up to 1,600, so very, very slowly beginning to build up the Confederate forces. Or maybe they're just replacing garrison units. I'm not sure. That wouldn't be big enough to be a unit or anything like that. All right, guys, so we've been going for about an hour, so I'm just going to go ahead and take a piece. So we're gonna exit out of the gameplay I was playing here, and I'm going to show just a very brief tutorial, if you will, on how to create an army or recruit new troops. This was taken from my live stream yesterday, where I did it for the first time. But I think it's really neat because it shows you how easy it is to just build units and how modular the armies are, and how you build the OOB is just really intuitive, and I think a huge strength of this game. And so I think if you just see literally the first time that I try to do this, I think it's illustrative of just how damn easy it is. I was a little bit confused at one point because the unit sizes changed from 750 to 3,000 when you go from 3-month recruits to 12-month recruits. But overall, I think this just shows how brilliant and easy this system is. And then we'll wrap this video up here. This video was never intended to be like, hey, we're actually going to start fighting the campaign. But this is the very beginning of our look at the campaign and how things begin. And I think, for that extent, the video accomplished its goals. All right, the 26th Army is here. We need to recruit more troops, though, that's for sure. So let's do this. So is that how you spell Potomac? I'm not sure. I don't know. Oh, no, I typoed. I didn't mean to have 2 P's there, 2 O's there. I'm not stupid. Potomac. Make their uniforms gray. Yeah, I don't want to be confusing. All right, so the Third Brigade. You are the Third Brigade. And the affections of your general. All right. So, maybe that's because I haven't formed a division yet. So we'll do that. We'll form a corps. Then we'll form a division. Then we'll assign this brigade to that division. All right. So now if I add a new unit here, is it still 3,000? It looks like it is. It looks like it is still 3,000. I don't understand. Maybe it's because we moved up to the next army level. So we moved up to the 12-month soldiers, which unit probably defaults to 3,000 men. Still kind of confusing, but we'll give him the round hats here. No, actually that should, hey, this guy looks like a professional soldier. We'll give him that. I don't think the appearance doesn't appear to change cost or anything. All right, so we're going to raise 2 Pennsylvania brigades. And then we'll raise New York. We'll have a New York brigade. They look like they're from New York. Why not? So that division will have 3 brigades. So it's a little bit quicker now that I don't have to do individual regiments. So we'll have, wait, we have 2 third brigades? Now that's not confusing. All right, I just renamed that brigade the first. So we've got the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd brigades. It's 9,000 men in this division. Then we'll go ahead and we'll add an artillery unit, an artillery battery. From New Jersey, I suppose. Artillery. All right, so we're raising 1 battery of artillery. I think 3 brigades per division, and then a battery of artillery. Maybe we should have a battery for every brigade. I'm not sure. This feels like the kind of game that you would absolutely love to just min-max and micromanage and just, you know, jump in and out of and figure out like what the optimal army organization is. Is there a way to dismiss soldiers? Because I kind of want to get rid of these guys. They're kind of in the way of my perfect army order of battle. All right, so we're going to add another division. So we'll have another New York brigade. We'll give these guys green jackets. Green jackets. All right. So they're going to be the 1st brigade of this division. We're going to raise a Wisconsin brigade. They're going to wear black hats because, well, they can't have black hats. It's the closest thing they can get to being the Iron Brigade, though, I guess. I wonder if it'll take longer because they're further away. Yeah, they're going to take 17 days as opposed to the New York Brigade will take 8 days. So distance to the army also seems to matter in terms of the length of time it takes for them to raise. I'm going to give you guys purple coats. Purple coats in that brigade. And then we'll raise another artillery battery as well. The artillery battery will be from Rhode Island since artillery batteries are smaller. Or artillery battalion. So how many guns are in a battalion here? 23 guns. Okay, so 23 guns for 9,000 soldiers. That might be a little bit light. But all right, so we've got 2 divisions forming here. So 9,000 infantry, 18,000 infantry. That's probably good for a corps. We'll make this army 36,000 men, and we'll make it have 2 corps. 2 corps, 4 divisions. Oh, shoot. Nope. Wrong group. Wrong group. All right, so this guy will form in the 2nd corps. Kind of ignoring these Pennsylvania militia because they're going to be gone soon. Okay, guys, and with that being said, that's my first look at Grand Tactician, the Civil War, 1861 to 1865. The game is currently still in a beta state. It will be in early access for folks to purchase as of August 21st. Definitely still a work in progress. I think you see a few things where things are a little bit slow, a little bit laggy, a little bit clicky. The AI in the campaign still is definitely something that's being worked on. The dev has even told me as much. But I see a lot of promise behind this, and I just wanted to kind of show you guys, like, when you very first jump into the campaign for the first time, what are you looking at? What can you see here? Might have been a little bit longer than I would like. My intent was not to be an hour. I wanted it to be like a quick 30-minute exploration video. But as I tried to explain everything and sort of get into the depth of it, it just went a little bit longer than I had planned on doing. So I think I gave you a good overview of what the different screens are, what the different options are, sort of how you start the campaign. Obviously, we didn't get to any war or conflict or anything like that, but that will come in future videos. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know your thoughts down below, and until next time, this is the Historical Gamer saying, as always, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, I'm out.